Welcome to another episode of the Focus Bee Show. Today I'm here with Camilla Sievers, a food tech founder, Forbes moderator, and mentor. And Camilla was also voted Forbes 30 under 30 in the leadership category. Thank you so much for being here today, Camilla.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me, Katie.
My pleasure. You've probably heard that Tony Robbins talks about the science of achievement, which is essentially the tools and strategies that lead us to be successful. I'm wondering, what were your struggles on the way to success?
Oh wow, I could possibly start speak an hour about this, but I would say, in a sense, it was always believing that one isn't good enough and one is not doing enough, and both of those things, push you to do more than probably most people. But also you have never this kind of feeling of being satisfied or yeah, just, also holding yourself to a pace that is healthy, and celebrating your achievements. I've never celebrated any achievements because, it was always on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And there was a lot of pressure always involved, which resulted in being sick and yeah, long days, long years, with not enough of sleep, I'm sure, and not a lot of self-care or self-love.
Yes, I can definitely relate to this, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners can also relate. This feeling of not being good enough or not doing enough, and having this constant pressure and not pausing along the way, like you said, to celebrate our achievements. So I'm wondering, how did you manage to turn this around, to not stay in this unhealthy cycle of always doing more and never feeling satisfied?
So I think this I actually read a couple of months ago. So I think what happens is we learn stuff when we're children and then go into adulthood. And then when we leave the home, let's say in our 20s is where we implement what we've learned, and we have our own kind of struggle within the worlds that we're roaming. And so this is the first kinds of lessons that we pick up on. Is this what we've learned and what we've been told actually real in our worlds, that we need to navigate? And so the 20s are really there for a lot of struggle and a lot of disbelief and a lot of questioning things. And so what happens apparently in the brain right around the time when you're 30 is the part of the brain that learned and absorbed the environment like a sponge in childhood and adolescence merges with the brain of the part of the brain that learns and questions everything in your 20s. And so in your 30s, you're like, do I actually need to feel and like this all the time, questioning and having the feeling that these two worlds are not aligned 100%? Do I need to struggle all the time because on one way I feel this is the right way, and then my world is telling me it's not? And so I would say through a lot of falling down, you come to the conclusion that yes, you can fall down another time, and probably the 10th or the 20th time about the same issue, or you say, I will let go of the beliefs that I've carried with me a long time, and I will actually change from now on how I think about stuff, how I evaluate stuff, and how I do stuff. And so for me, I would say I worked myself into sickness for like the past 4 or 5 years. So I was sick at every December, New Year's holidays kind of. And the last time this happened was about a year ago. And then I went to my boss and I said, you know what, I'm actually going to take you up on that offer of having a leadership coach. I would like to have a leadership coach because a year earlier, I worked myself kind of into mono, and I was like, okay, this is not good. Okay, I actually need to evaluate here. And I took a year to really think about why I'm feeling a certain way in certain situations, how often that happens, in what intensity it happens. And so a year later, I kind of had enough data to evaluate this with a coach. And so I started this, funnily enough, first week of lockdown in March. This was not planned. We didn't know that lockdown was coming, but here I was sitting alone on the couch with a coach and discussed everything, like the deepest, darkest secrets of my soul and all of the varieties of my imposter syndrome, which I kind of already analyzed myself, but now having the help of a professional to really dig deep and make the conscious decision to not wanting to feel or be this way anymore. And yeah, so it took me a long time, 4 or 5 years, and then 1 proper year of analyzing, and then professional help of another like 3-4 months.
This is fascinating. From what I've understood from what you said, it first begins with us acquiring all these patterns that are unhealthy that we practice in our 20s, and we realize later on in our late 20s or 30s that they no longer serve us, like the beliefs and the patterns and doing too much or not feeling good enough, for example. And then also you mentioned that it took you to be sick several times, more than once, and generally towards December and January, for you to realize, okay, I need to work on this. And a really interesting part you mentioned was also that you took sort of a year where you were already reflecting on this, already looking into it, so that then when you began with the coach, it was even more effective because you'd realize some of your patterns, you realize some of the things that were getting in the way, and then she could help you work on this. So I'm curious, when you were working with your leadership coach, how did she help you, or how did you work together to overcome this imposter syndrome, for example?
So, I mean, it was a he. So he was and for me, that's also, you know, everybody has to decide for themselves what they need. I kind of felt, in order for my brain to believe somebody, it has to be a very life experienced older man. I don't know why, but you know, I felt very comfortable with a 60-plus-year-old multiple CEO that also turned away from this super highly engaging working life and said, no, now I want to help people, because I've seen so much people struggling in the working world. And so we had all of these sessions, which basically started out with, so the big overall question was, where does your compass point? What do you want to do? And what's at the core of who you are? And then you analyze, why are you standing in the way of achieving who you want to become? And why are you hanging on to patterns that you've learned in an environment that you're no longer in? Because the thing is not that any of this, you know, there is no truth or falsehood. It's whatever your reality makes it out to be, and whatever feels right to you is right to you, and it doesn't have to be for the next person. And so to realize to not, you know, say goodbye to parts of your identity that makes you feel bad because you're like, why do I need to say goodbye to this? And why is this not serving me if it has served me for 20 years or 25 years? But to realize that you're ever evolving, and that, you know, all of these things that you learn, you have to relearn, because life is a constant flow and in constant flow. And the ability to adapt to new beliefs or new feelings, and to give all of that space to be experienced and not looked away from, which we, I think, learn in school. It's like, you know, don't ask questions, just, you know, believe what you've been told, and kind of, yeah, just do it like the older people do it. I think that was the key in understanding of what is holding me back, why do I hold on to this, and how can I let go in the long term. And it was, you know, at the end of this, he basically said to me, I've been doing this for like 18 years, and I've never in my life met a person who is so extraordinarily brilliant and so truthful and looks into every little thing there is about herself and analyzes it, and then looks back and does not believe that she's just done so. So it was, and at the end of the day, he was like, now we've discussed everything. You know where your compass points, you know how to get there. You're already doing it. Just the struggle that, you know, that everything has to feel the worst it can possibly feel. Otherwise it's not good enough. You know, it always has to be this constant struggle. You slowly but surely can believe that after 10 or 12 years of working really hard, that some things don't, you know, can just happen very quickly and easy because you've already put in such a great amount of hours, and the belief that just because as a child everything was so hard for you, it doesn't need to be anymore. And so he got every week I got kind of homework, which then the good student that I am, the good you know, girl that I am, no, I implemented over and over and over again. And then I realized, okay, but I understand this rationally now, and I see when these situations are coming, and I see how I'm feeling, but who is helping me now to not feel this way? Because we cannot switch off our feelings. They're just coming and they're overwhelming. And so either I can just stand here and look these feelings in the eyes until they're gone. And if it takes 20 minutes, 20 hours, 2 days, or I can do what most people usually do. It's like, oh, I just distract myself. I just go read a book. I just go out and eat something. I just, you know, turn on Netflix, or I just talk to a friend. So whatever gives my attention away. And so the facing of the fears, I think, is super scary, because we rather feel this terror. Most people, and that's the problem, because we've never been taught otherwise. Most people rather face the same terror over and over again because it's less terrifying than facing something unknown. And so you have to make yourself face the unknown to actually see it's not scary. And you can also survive that. And behind that actually may lie something that is salvation to you.
This is so beautiful. It's like giving me goosebumps everywhere. I loved what you said, several things that you said, but the last thing that you were talking about, how people distract themselves. And I know, and you probably also have felt this, when we naturally feel the urge to start reading or doing something else to distract ourselves from these feelings. And the difference is when we learn how to do this, we manage to pause and say, okay, am I going to read, for example, because I generally fancy doing it now, or is it just because I can't manage to confront these feelings and it's a struggle? And then, you know, you might pause and confront this, or reflect on it, or journal, or meditate. And once you learn how to do this, it's exactly what you said. It gives you more power, because you're no longer dependent on avoiding these thoughts, because wanting to avoid these thoughts and feelings takes off a lot of our power, and it drains our energy constantly. But if you confront them once and for all, they go.
And what I will also say is that this is true for every single part in life, and it will always be true. And whatever you look at, if it's a relationship or a friendship or a work colleagues, or making a decision about where to move, to buy an apartment, or marry, or have children, whatever it is, like, this will always happen. This is just how we've been built. This is our genetics from millions of years ago that served us a long time. And now we're living in a too complex world for our primate brain. And so this is also not a, you know, you'll deal with it once and will never happen again. You just have to be aware. And I think the light bulb that came on in my brain is to realize that there is no end goal. The goal is to live this every day and to be aware every day, and to give days space where you cannot, because you're not able. And this is what I mean with the flow. We're all in constant flow. We're creatures of energy. We're not robots that feel the same every hour of the day, every day of the week. And I think the acceptance that you can only try your best, and there will be better days and there will be worse days, is the most beautiful gift you can tell you, because that is constant growth.
Yes, the acceptance, and also the fact of prioritizing the process over the goals. And I think part of what is destructive and part of what you explained at the beginning of feeling we're not doing enough or that we're not good enough or the imposter syndrome comes a lot from focusing on the end goal. Because we have one goal and then we just like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing enough, go, 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 go. Then we reach it. And like you said, don't take the time to celebrate. And by then we have another goal. And then the problem is we're never enjoying the process. And so
Exactly
if you
right.
enjoy the process, you feel like shit. How can you enjoy your life?
And leadership or successful people have one thing in common. They always focus on the process, never on the outcome. 2 quotes I heard today, which were on a podcast I listened to when I was walking the dog this morning. I have to sprinkle in here because they were so amazing. So one was, anxiety is experiencing failure in advance. And it's always like the terror never comes from the actual event. The terror always comes from the thoughts that we have prior a possible event. And if you look back, you've survived everything. You don't need to worry. But we constantly worry about 100,000 of possibilities, of which possibly, none of those will ever happen. And this brings me to my second quote is, the way we act determines how we feel way more often than the way we feel determines how we act. And if you live that, I think everybody can ultimately better their lives with small steps. Has a huge impact though on how you go through and experience life as a whole.
This is so beautiful. It's like what they say about smiling, that when we're happy, we smile, but also when we smile, we feel happy. And it's exactly the same. We're acting, so we're smiling. And this sort of leads our brain to believe, oh, I must be feeling happy then. And then we do.
Exactly.
So we act, and then that has an impact on how we feel. So I'm curious, after you've learned all this, implemented on this, worked on this with your leadership coach, how has that actually impacted your performance in your business?
It's so funny that you asked, because I think I was as successful as I was before, while never running on empty. And I just live completely intuitively now. I don't stress about anything. I don't have these, there still are external feelings, but I'm not consumed by them anymore. So it's like they come here, I acknowledge them, I see that they're there and that they're there to tell me something and that they're important. But I'm not, I'm not a slave of whatever they try to do to me, kind of. And so I go through life very intuitively. I don't stress. I don't feel any anxiety. I'm totally calm about all the things that I cannot change with a 99.9% of your daily kind of goals or meetings and whatever it is that you do. And so I'm completely calm now, and I feel like I have so much more energy and just are so aligned with myself while not working as hard and producing the same output and sleeping better, eating better. It's just it's when they talk, I always obviously knew the concept of like, you have to implement this as a lifestyle. But now I feel for the first time I have implemented this as a lifestyle, and I think it's a beautiful thing, because you just are so much calmer. And as soon as you figure yourself out, and this is crazy, your whole environment feels it. Like, people come up to me and tell me, you've completely changed. And that doesn't mean like that I wasn't I was cheery and nice before, but they felt this underlying stressed out, kind of going through life. And now they just feel like and see the aura and are like, oh, Camilla, it's so great. And how do you do that? How can I do that? And it's been amazing to share my experience, to say.
Well, an amazing transformation. It's so wonderful that you managed to sort of summarize this entire transformation through this episode. If you were to give one piece of advice or one tip to people who are listening to you and who think, wow, I really want to go about this transformation. I also feel how she used to feel, and I would like to feel calmer and more aligned. What would be the one piece of information or tip that you think could help them to start this journey?
I think journaling is a good way to start. So two things. I think journaling, so that there are two parts of the mind. There's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind is basically the autopilot that does everything that we've learned, and it's just stored, right? And the conscious mind is what we're actively doing when we're walking around and working and stuff. So I think the first part is to consciously be aware of where you're at, what is hurting you, and what kind of triggers do you have, and where do you want to go, and why? Like, what's your why? Why does this not serve you? Or why does this not feel right? And where do you want it to be? And then the second part, and this is, I can only speak from my own experience. So I figured all this out, and my coach was like, I can't help you now because, I mean, we're done, you're done, you know it. And I was like, okay, great. When is this coming to my stomach? When do I not feel feelings anymore? Or I'm not consumed by these external feelings. And I started to do hypnotherapy with a friend of mine, also in lockdown, over Zoom. She was in New York. I was in Carinthia in south of Austria. And that was the second part, because there you go into your subconscious and you actually letting the conscious mind step back. So the monkey mind goes into the background, is not distracting you, is not chattering 24 hours. And your subconscious mind brings up the issues that are basically the root of why you behave or feel in certain situations like you behave or feel. And that gives you the possibility to look at that and understand it and be in a mindset where you can actively say, okay, I understood it, I accept it, it doesn't serve me right now, I want to change it. And then you wake up and your brain has changed. It sounds like magic, you know, and for me, it really has been transformational because I looked at all my stuff. I realized I was a bad kid in school. You know, I was just always struggling, and that's where also the feeling of like never being good enough, or everything has to feel like super hard, and it has to be super hard work, and I can never relax and stuff. And I understand that I felt like that as a child. And I understand now that I'm a grown woman and my brain is fully developed, I am capable of all the things I want to do, and I don't need to feel like that. And I woke up and I've never felt like that before, after. And so for me, it really is the conscious mind and the subconscious mind that needs to be dealt with in order for it to create a whole lasting impact in your life.
This is a wonderful way to sort of summarize what we've been discussing. Having, on the one hand, like you said, the conscious part, which is through journaling, and then, like you said, working with your coach, being more clear on where you're going, where you're at, what's in the way, that you'd already partly discovered through journaling. And once you're clear on that, working on these beliefs through, for example, in your case, through hypnotherapy. Thank you so much for sharing this today, Camilla. It was amazing. Where can people find you if they're listening? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
I mean, LinkedIn always works, but I'm also on all the other social media platforms. So just add DM and I'll be happy to get back to anyone.
Fantastic. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you again for being here, Camilla. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great thing that you're doing, Katie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.